Hello, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Aarti.
Good evening, ma'am.
I'm so sorry for the technical glitch. Since morning, I'm facing so much technical issues today that I'm not able to understand what is this. So once again, good evening, all the viewers, and we welcome you to our last session of today's. That is, Aarti is there with us on stage, and this is the session of APAC, as we are already telling you since morning that this is APAC with 7.2, and I am Muktasar Blok, founder and leader of GEG Ghaziabad, and Panna ma'am has also not joined. So this is our mutual session of GEG Ghaziabad and Surat, and we have Aarti. Aarti, please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think it should have been a long day since afternoon, all back-to-back sessions. There were interesting sessions from on gamification or crowdsource or flip. It was actually an awesome
Yeah,
watch, and
yeah.
I think not given that we had a glitch and we started late, I'll probably start with my presentation
Yes,
quickly.
yes, sure.
Yeah, I'm Aarti Balasubramanian. I work as a senior mathematics teacher and mathematics mentor in Gear Innovative International School, Bangalore. I have a close to a decade of IT experience, and after that, I was inspired by the concept of multiple intelligences, owing to which I switched switched the stream basically to teaching line. I love teaching for the last 4 5 years, and that's been a very enjoyable moment. So let me start with the presentation. And good evening to all the good evening, good afternoon, and good morning. Considering the time zones, I think we do have different varied time zones here. So very good evening and good afternoon and a good morning to all of you, all the participants here. Let me get started. The theme here I'm going to discuss today is on integrating multiple intelligences, team, and technology in teaching of mathematics. I know the topics by themselves are individually very vast and wide. So I have taken a glimpse and a sample of each of it to give you a sample of what we will be able to do, and it's up to the viewers and all of us to take it forward to our own depth and dimensions. So let me start with the session. Multiple intelligences. This is where actually we are looking at. So let me ask a question. You all can join this Slido. Either you can scan this QR code, or you can go to slido.com and just type 2233880, and you should be able to see this question, answer this question, and as soon as you type, we'll be able to see the responses from our audience here. I think we can give a minute. Okay, I think I should go full screen. What is one word that comes to your mind when you hear the word intelligence? Okay, IQ. Okay, this is what has even been highlighted by Slido as a most common response. So I think there are a few participants still responding, but taking this as a cue, IQ, because we always tend to associate a particular number or an IQ coefficient to particular whenever we say intelligence. But genuinely, is it something, a score that actually talks about intelligence is something we want to interpret, introspect, and all that, right? So if you look at this, if you have a class full of varied intelligences, you might have a Charles Darwin in your class, you might have a Oprah Winfrey or a Picasso, or you'll have an Einstein, then Shakespeare. Do you think one IQ test score can essentially define all these intelligences together? No, with coming out of the idea as single intelligence, we started. It was Howard Gardner in 1983 who coined the term of intelligences, multiple intelligences. Intelligence is essentially associated with looking at as a single unit, the unit of processing. Mostly IQ tests take something with respect to linguistic or your logical mathematical is what it actually targets. But intelligences are really really varied. You can have an analogy to 9 different processors to your brain, where you have 9 partitions which are actually working in tandem in connection with each other. So Howard Gardner in 1983 introduced seven intelligences basically, and then he added 2 more. We have 9 multiple intelligences now. He says it's essentially the potential to process information. It can be activated in a cultural setting, or to solve problems, either to solve problems or to create products. I think there are few keywords as educationists or with the teachers which are of very good importance to us. I'll be covering that in the successive slides. The key here is it can be activated in a cultural setting. That means it's not just it is genetic, it is inborn, it can be developed. That's a very good pointer for us, because we can work on making it, we can work towards making developing these intelligences in our children. So what are these 9 intelligences and how it mean? I'm not going to go very in depth about intelligences, but as the name suggests, we should have a cue. The more I want to spend on planning activities, designing activities around these intelligences. So in case you are interested, you can dive deep further with respect to that. So what we can do is linguistic intelligence. As the name says, it's more language oriented. So read, what do these children would prefer doing? Read, write, talk, listen, and this is how we can tap this intelligence. The next one is logical mathematical. Obviously, they will know to quantify, they'll think critically, they know the reason, cause and effect, they love to experiment. And this kind of thinking is the linguistic and logical mathematical together have been usually considered school intelligences. Then comes visual spatial. Gardner actually calls it spatial, primarily because people who are able to process information or have the intellectual competencies around with the spatial skills. They know to draw well, they can see patterns, visualize, they can imagine, they can create mental maps of a particular place. When you see some people, when they go to different places, unknown places, they will be able to locate and identify and navigate those places very better. They have very good spatial intelligences. So 3 intelligences we saw. The next one is bodily kinesthetic. I think I want to take an example. When we go buy a product, most of the times we tend to start assembling it ourselves. Generally don't read manuals and all that, right? You go hands on. Mostly people or children who are interested with respect to working hands on, building something, acting something, touching, playing, moving, dancing, not just big movements like a sports or athlete. Alone dancers need not be alone bodily kinesthetic. Any small, precise work, say for example, if you are able to sculpt, or if you are very skillful in making a craft or in a surgery, it also, a surgeon also uses his bodily kinesthetic skills. Then musical, as the name says, they have a fantastic competency with respect to rhythm, pattern, music, notes. They can compose. And these 5 intelligences, apart from these next two that we are talking about are interpersonal and intrapersonal. As the name says, interpersonal means they are able to connect to each other very well. They are very good at collaborating. They are very good at teaching, very good at interacting, convincing, and all these skills you see in these children. Intrapersonal, they know their strengths and weaknesses very well, and they will know to reflect on. They can make analogies of things or that are being taught with respect to self and reflect. Then comes naturalist, people who love to explore and be close to nature and use nature as essentially a medium to learn and explore and enjoy. So these are the 9 intelligences that this gives us a good perspective of where we want to start with. So when we enter a classroom next time, I think we should look at the children from this perspective to see what all we can do. So what are the key educational implications? Two. One is personalization, individualization, knowing that these children are essentially varied and different. We need to differentiate the teaching, differentiate our assignments, and give them choices. Second, pluralization. Whatever we teach, we should, if it's a word, it's an important concept. We should teach in multiple ways. Maybe if you are a logical person, you tend to do only with respect to calculations, but there will be many visual spatial learners or You will have learners who are very good at building things and learning, kinesthetic learners. So whenever we design activities, we should at least cover target three intelligences so that the activities reach a bigger audience and a bigger crowd. So where comes technology? This has given a background on multiple intelligence. Now let's get into action. Whatever we talked about, individualization, discovery, visualization, meaningful learning, active engagement, and differentiation. All this we are able to achieve with respect to technology with all those recent tools. And the last 2 years, whatever we have been we have plethora of resources because of the COVID time that have actually popped up, and it's time for us to capitalize on those. So entering the important section, all of us think art is usually something related to painting or something with art, drawing, and all that. Art is more than that. So art includes all the other skills with music, dance, theater, all of them involve art. We all Saturday evening, so I think all of us would love to have some break. Probably we love to watch something, watch some dance programs, videos, movies, and all that. I promise you, we do have a couple of interesting activities here. So let's start with what all types of art integration we were able to achieve. This one is like the Desmos Art Challenge. Desmos is, I think, all of us, all the mathematics teacher, especially people who have been there in the math domain the last few years, we would have definitely used Desmos and GeoGebra. Not getting into the what the tool is about. We created a Desmos Live challenge activity. This is more of a formative assessment. Every formative assessment need not be a written test. So give them something challenging and something interesting. So this is just a hand-drawn scenery. Okay, you can draw anything. This is just a lighthouse or this is just a bridge and all this. Ask them to recreate. We ask children to recreate whatever they had, whatever we show on the screen first, and then they are free to add on or make modifications and then make changes to a little subtle changes or make it enhanced versions of this according to their own creativity. So the task is essentially, if you see from a mathematical perspective, the curve that you see here is actually a parabola. So they have to find and frame the equation for this. The line that you see here is actually a straight line equation. You see the wave here, it's essentially a sine wave. You see again here, you see a curve here. This is a different right-handed parabola. And you see slanted slopes, straight lines. And you see birds with very minute details of a flip. So let's see what students were able to create. So these were the student responses. If you see here from our original picture, this was a very close, close variant, but there are differences. They have colored the waters, they've colored the sun, and all this coloring actually teaches something on linear inequalities, which they will be actually learning probably at a later stage of next grade or so, but they will be learning it earlier than that. And these are the different functions that they used, and these are the different this is basically the output. And then see the variation in what the children have done. Essentially, somebody has designed a boat like this, somebody has designed a boat like this, and you have as I said, you have coloring, you have filling, and looking into this again, somebody is able to create a lighthouse. And this picture doesn't actually capture that. They actually had an animation equivalent of the light switching this side to that side. So this is how we can create a formative assessment using our technology tools with which we can make it more interesting and make it more fun, and also making sure the necessary concepts are learned. The next one that we are looking at, I think all of us will love this. I'll stop talking and I'll play this for a minute or less than a minute. I think owing to short duration that we have, This is an assembly activity. We do have interesting assemblies apart from the regular prayer and all that. This was celebrated on National Mathematics Day, Srinivasa Ramanujan's birthday. On that day, we children came up with, they choreographed. This every step was actually choreographed and mapped to a particular function, and they understand how the graph of these functions look. And they also understand, I think if you can see this, these are the different functions. They also understand how they have been transformed. When they move right or move left, what happens to the function? These are equations of semicircles, spirals, and the different step functions and all that. So in this, we might not have time to discuss all the intelligences, but if you look, what all intelligences have been used here, I think you can put it in the chat. Whatever you think are the intelligences which have been used here. I think I'll come back and see the chat questions. And there is another interesting. So another interesting activity when we give the theme of math and dance. I have another video, and then I'll again come back. But please do post what are the intelligences you think have been involved when we involved math and dance. And another small short video. Okay, coming back to this before I go to the next one, again with math and dance. The last one that we saw was essentially an integration of a Desmos activity and how they created it was a fusion where they actually danced, choreographed, and they also had a Desmos character designed, and then the character also dancing with respect to the functions. So what Howard Gardner says, when we want the creativity and the originality will essentially be at their best when we target the dominant multiple intelligences of children. So that is, I think, key to us. I think Sandhya ma'am has said bodily, kinesthetic, musical, logical, interpersonal. Perfect. And we do have all these intelligences blended. And as I said, the creativity and originality develops when we look at these activities. Again, another small snippet when you talk about art integration with music. This is a calculus song. I think all of us, even from our grades, 11th, 12th, means calculus means lot of formula, differentiation, integration are very difficult. But look at the way these children have come up with something with which they will remember something better. They've composed their own poem and they have performed a small song for differentiation. I would love to hear more, but again, going to time. This is the secant tan cosec minus cot is something is actually used as a key to remember your derivatives. So how they have come up with a unique way of remembering that, making it little lighter and easier. And this is another performance by children who wrote a poem on limits, the idea of limits, and where the linguistic intelligence and also their musical and logical mathematical intelligence, bodily kinesthetic, because they played instruments and integrated all this with interpersonal, this was also used. So going to the next, this is a very common form that we have essentially seen. For example, art and painting, drawing, that we are able to connect easily. So this one is on glass painting done. This was done. The one thing which I wanted to add is this was done before even the concepts of or maxima or minima were even taught. So what happens is the children find there is a pattern that whenever there is a peak here, if you see the left-hand side is shaded red here, right is blue here, here again red and blue here, there is a pattern that actually changes. And when you identify the pattern, later when you learn that it is actually change in a derivative, it makes it very easier for them to connect and understand the idea of differentiation. So this was one thing. This section, whatever we talked about, is about integration, art integration with music, dance, and with respect to art. The next section that I am actually looking at, how we can, as I said, three things we are covering. One is with MI and art. The second thing is with our STEM projects. How we will enhance and how we will enhance the learning with some STEM-based class activities and a couple of projects with which children will be able to learn something more deeper and understand the real applications of that. So getting on to, I think I'll wait for the image to load from the beginning. This is essentially a sine wave car. So children in our class first, we assembled, disassembled, assembled and all this, and then tried and see what was the curve that was actually created here. So the couple of questions obviously will be posed. Why will it create a sine wave? How is this? This is designed so that a sine wave is drawn. What needs to be modified to change the amplitude of this, or to change the frequency of this? How will these two? How will we achieve these two? And where is the technology part for this? We actually look at. One second, I think I have to go to the. We actually look at plotting them in GeoGebra or in Desmas to understand what happens when frequency changes. And the second one, what happens when your amplitude changes. So any simple harmonic motion is easily understandable. This is going to be very easy for them to connect something with physics and to see in real life where there is a wave pattern that is a repeating wave pattern that is actually coming into place. This is an example of a STEM-based class activity. The second example that I want to quote is about a project. So children design a real life roller coaster, a model, of course, a scaled model of that. You're looking at, they will design this using all the Desmos and GeoGebra digital tools. They break this function into 5 parabolas. You see, this is one curve down, one up, one down, one up, and then one. And then they get on to building this. So again, this is a very short video. So this is again integrated with math and physics primarily, where you see what could be the initial velocity, where on the path, where why will it reach the peak, and why should the heights be reduced, and all these small basic things. When you actually build, you will understand these things better. Okay, this is the second example. I think the video played again. This is the example which I talked about a project. Let's see some other interesting projects where I'll show you and then I'll explain. Okay, a question for this probably. We usually see carom boards with square ones with the corners being the pockets. Okay, this one was designed in such a way that if you had seen on the video, we would have seen 2 foci of the ellipse where the striker is at one end and the other one is at the pocket. So you're ensuring that always whenever you hit, it always goes to the pocket. It might be very interesting to see as a play, but what is the underlying property involved is the reflective property of the ellipse. That children understand that anything, anywhere, always passes through one foci will always reach the other foci, which has brilliant applications today, even in lithotripsy and so many other. Apart from the commonly known elliptical paths, in multiple domains, these are being applied. The next example, again, these are Wi-Fi boosters, parabolic Wi-Fi boosters. So depending on the router, and it's custom made. I mean, obviously you can't have a you one size fits all type of a router here. For their router, they measure and then they created their own respective parabolic Wi-Fi boosters with which they were able to achieve at least a 10 Mbps signal speed increase whenever they applied these routers. And this is a parabolic solar cooker where children would tried having to see the effect of how, so when you have a parabolic path, how the energy is essentially concentrated at a particular point, which is a simple idea of our dish TV that we see as well. So these are the type of projects which I actually wanted to cover before we get on to the next slide. So we saw how we can integrate art and how we can integrate STEM projects. Now coming to, okay, these all these have been really interesting, but day to day when we do, isn't that very important that we integrate technology and we ensure every day's learning is also more meaningful? Here we have. So before we start, I think this is something we will take few minutes to know how we essentially plan activities. Not just this might be targeted more with secondary and senior secondary, but any level that we are essentially targeting, any subject, we always go with essentially a lesson plan. So we have some activities in mind. So whenever we are designing activities, what are the different, we have a table in mind where we look at what are the different MIs that we are actually targeting. For example, I will be showing some of these activities as to how we did and how we conceptualized is something which I wanted to add, because this is what will help all teachers to think on those lines and then customize their own lesson plans. For example, this one, when you are introducing trigonometry, the basic they should know is essentially about what similar triangles are, how their ratios are essentially same. So for that, we designed two activities. One was a hands-on activity where they will actually measure the lengths of triangles. The other was a Desmos exploration. So how we created a custom experiment, as I said, individualized Desmos activity for each child. And then how we assign this in Google Classroom and track where children, how much they have progressed. And we can pitch in if needed to help those children who need little more help. So what were the MIs that were targeted? Logical, visual, spatial, and bodily kinesthetic. So these were the three. So whenever we plan activities, it's better to plan at least three MIs. Of course, 7 or 8 might be very interesting, but what we are actually looking at may not be so practical for all. So wherever possible, have more MIs or at least three MIs. The second one about history, because we generally don't know how things evolved. We always you go with formula and then go, okay, this is the formula, go ahead with it. But there is a story associated with it. There is a history associated with it. Why will that help? Because from today, when children are going to innovate or create something, they will have an equivalent connect for all creators of tomorrow. For with the 21st century skills that we are talking about, knowing history is also important. So how do we assign this activity? We have children who have this particular activity, we gave different options. It can be a video presentation, it can be a timeline chart, it can be a presentation, or it can be a quiz we conducted. I think we'll have a small question on quiz to show you what we did. And then it could be a song, giving them options and ensuring we use all the technology tools to support that. Then the concepts of sine and cosine ratio, again this activity we had two, and then assignment on finding patterns and finding GeoGebra exploration, and then these were the 4 MIs which were covered. Then comes the very important part, what you learn you apply. Again, apply to different these were the intelligences targeted. How do you estimate of tall objects, and also give them an unfamiliar situation which is a simulated situation, and see how they actually act on it. Then I think these two we saw, functions, dance, and calculus and music. So getting on to the details of what we discussed now. So this is the activity where we set the Desmos activity, where children explore how different similar triangles, if this angle is same, how much this triangle grows bigger or smaller in a right angle triangle, the ratios are going to stay constant. This is a very interesting connect which actually makes them to connect between similar triangles and the idea of trigonometry. The next one, there are learners, the different ratios. All of us know sine 0 is 0, this is 1, root 3 by 2, and values and how children interpret in their own ways. These are like very, very short, few seconds clips. I'll play that and then I'll continue.
So here we have a right triangle with an angle marked as theta. Basically what ma'am did is she called out any of the 6 trigonometric ratios, and we'd have to touch the corresponding sides. Like for example, if she called out sine theta, then we'd have to touch opposite and then hypotenuse. Thank you.
So katwa, so katwa, so katwa, so katwa.
This is primarily for the bodily kinesthetic learners. Apart from telling them sine is always opposite by hypotenuse, refer where the triangles where the sides point to. The tap memory, it creates a muscle memory for them to remember the ratios. And then again, the history project, as I said, we can give video assignments and all that. Again, I'll play how much children do a research and then come back and they present.
Gia for sine and Cogia for cosine, which were lost in translation to become sine and cosine.
A lot of other Indian mathematicians worked on trigonometry. Bhaskara 1 and Bhaskara 2 came up with many developments in this field, one of which was calculating the sine value of acute angles.
Madhva, who was another mathematician of the time, made great strides in.
Again, I think I'll just keep it shortened. I'm playing short clips to know what it is. So if you have seen, instead of have somebody telling you this is the history, children do research and then they come up with an innovative ways of putting it across. With all the other classes learn better. Peer learning is far more influential than just a teacher learned. And this is the timeline of mathematics. I would like you to go to mathigon.timeline. I'll share this tab for a second. I hope you are able to see the Mathicon. This is an excellent resource to talk about, where you can even look at, you can design multiple activities based on this. It has an entire history and lineage of how things evolved of different mathematicians, what were the different stages and all that. I have a small question for you. Let's see if you are able to get it in Slido. Those who were able to connect to Slido, I think you can continue with that. There is a question here. And the time link is again mathigon.timeline. The question is here. Who's the author of the book Leelavati? The timeline you are actually looking at is between 1000 and 1200. Between 1000 and 1200. Must be easy. I think I showed that. Okay, I have a lot of responses with Bhaskara too. I think it becomes so obvious. Okay, that's right. Bhaskara too. So again, as I said, it's up to the a teacher or a mentor or even a student to see how much they want to explore and then go further using these as the base activities. This is what we saw now. Then getting on, and this is the next activity which I talked about. We talk about, take this as a simple fishing rod, and when you see what happens to the height of the rod when you actually move the rod, when from 0 to 90, when you move the rod, what happens? How is the horizontal distance decreasing, and how these ratios are, sine is going from 0 to 1 and cos is going from 1 to 0, which is again a it was a very effective one, because many children were able to understand and remember this visual when you talked about sine and cos, about the distances. Then the next one, again, as I said, application, children made with a protractor and a straw and a string, just with a small lightweight. You can make your own inclinometers, or those who are not able to make, they installed the app. They installed the Android app of clinometer, and they were used to measure the angle. So where do you apply? So to find the heights of all these, any unknown object, say for example.
And since tan 45 is equal to 1, that means that the height of the cupboard, at least from my horizontal eye level, is 1.5 meters. Adding my eye level to it, which is 1.64 meters, I get a total height of 2.14 meters. And since that,
so any unforeseen, if I think if you can use it at your home, or you estimate a height of a building, height of a tower, or height of a tree, it could be anything. But this is hands-on. Okay, now virtually simulate a situation. We simulated to say now we have to cross the river. In the sense we used again GeoGebra and Desmos resources. If you see in this particular one, I'm not sure if you're able to see this angle. The question was to find the width of the river, but you have a limited constraint that you can see only an angle. This angle is fixed. You can't change the angle. So the idea is children will have to form an isosceles right angle triangle to use this particular idea to find what will be the width of the river. So when you are able to give these kind of unfamiliar situations or the case studies where they apply, it becomes more meaningful and also more applicable. Then these were few examples with respect to technology, and as I said, in every lesson plan today we have plethora of resources that we can always supplement in class. For example, 3D, the three-dimensional viewing is something children do have challenges in visualizing where an object, a point is in 3D. So these GeoGebra 3D, about two lines which never intersect, because children always tend to think, okay, two lines either are parallel or just intersect. The idea of a skewed line, looking at it in a 3D, GeoGebra 3D help children a lot to even visualize how lines and points and quadrants are all there, and visualize how we have conventions with respect to our 3D. Again, couple of examples about similar triangles. This is about area of integration on calculus. And there are, the younger you come, the younger the grades you come, the more and more the resources you have, and the more and more variety that you can cater to your classes. And this section talks about, as I talked about, how we brought it into classroom teaching. I think the last section, where we are almost close to winding up, is about games. Of course, all of us do like to play games. If I tell you tomorrow there is a test, and then if I tell you tomorrow you're going to come and play a game, we'll have games in class. But actually, I'm assessing you. Isn't that very interesting and enjoyable for both? So these are kind of formative assessments where this is like a Super Mario game where you have to change the equation of this particular parabola so that you can collect the coins. I've given a very simple example level here, and there are multiple levels in this particular in this particular assignment. I've given a very simple example where you actually change the equation of a quadratic, and then they actually collect coins and go. So your as a team mentor, our idea of finding and practicing quadratics is also achieved, and they also enjoy playing this game with various levels. Again, this is for straight lines, an equivalent idea. How do you form a line equation? You write the equation of a line so that you collect all the maximum coins. Then, not necessarily digital, teachers can create custom activities using Desmos or GeoGebra. So all these functions where we actually created a treasure hunt in class. So kind of a sequencing activity in class where one answer for one will be in the next. So all these cards were essentially prints were actually created from Desmos by the teachers, by us. And then we employ this in class in the way we want to actually conduct and do that. And it becomes a custom activity, and they don't have to be always digitally connected as well. But it does help even the teachers to create new activities. So I think I wanted to show this because this is the core of what we are talking about for today. Any activity that we plan, let's plan so that we have all maximum intelligences planned associated with that. Have a list of what all technology tools that we are actually giving. What kind of choices are we giving the children when we give assignments? Keep this in mind while planning. And then the summary is essentially, it's very essential to know the learner and their profile of intelligences. This will help us to plan the activities better. Teach important concepts in multiple ways. As I said, minimum 3 ways, minimum 3 MIs should be our goal. And individualized digital worksheets and assignments, which they can do at their own pace, but it will aid their learning. Then during the class, whenever we are, most of the schools do have smart boards. So wherever possible, or take them to lab and do activities so that whenever key concepts when we are covering, we are always enriching it with some digital supplements. Use games or quiz for formative assessments. Every time it need not be just a written test, and we can have some fun with formative assessments as well. Projects give choices, because when we give choices, children own. When they make their own choice, they own their assignment, and obviously because of that, the output is going to be definitely far exponentially better than what a choice that is given to them. Then MI oriented art, this is a holistic learning, so it's very important that for some concepts at least, this may not be possible for every single topic that we take, but for key activities, I think we should consider taking art integration as a holistic activity, where in collaborative works, that output they produce with respect to theater, dance, and art will enrich them, and it will also enrich us. And a very big thank you to GEG Surat and GEG Ghaziabad, and then GEG Delhi and CR Sangeeta ma'am also, who directed me to the English sessions, right sessions. And it's a really a pleasure and a privilege to be part of this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aarti, for giving us a wonderful session. And the participants were very excited to learn from you. Yes, Delhi NCR team is also there with us to hear your expertise, and it is very wonderful. I'm not from the maths background, but it seems very exciting to me also. So the teachers, I hope the teachers who are from maths background will find it very useful, and will definitely ask any questions if there are later on also. And
Yeah, ma'am.
thanks for coming up, and like, we are getting very great comments on your presentations.
Oh, thank you so much, ma'am. I think it's really I think it's a collab. This platform is amazing because we mutually learn, and finally, it's a children who want to get benefited, and it's a great platform.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes, definitely. Teachers are for this thing only, to give the best to the students. Yes.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
thank you, viewers, for attending this session. And this today is the last session of APEC 7.0, and we'll definitely meet tomorrow, 10 a.m. sharp. Okay, bye bye.
Bye, ma'am. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you all.